Good evening, everybody. It's July 17th, 2023, and this is a regular meeting of the Moscow City Council. Drew?
If you could please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great, thanks, everybody. Next up is the consent agenda, which consists of items that are either routine or non-controversial and have been previously vetted by either the Public Works and Finance Committee or the Administrative Committee. And any item can be pulled for separate consideration by any member of the City Council. Do I hear a motion on that?
Your Honor, I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, Sandra.
Aye.
Gina.
Aye.
Maureen.
Aye.
Julia.
Aye.
And Drew.
Aye.
And that passes. Good stuff. Next up is mayoral appointments, and I have one for this evening, Robert Spruill for the Parks and Recreation Commission with an expiration date of 12/31/2024.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
I
ma'am.
move that we approve your mayor's appointment.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? Okay, Drew,
Aye.
Julia,
Aye.
Maureen,
Aye.
Gina,
Aye.
and Sandra.
Aye.
Robert, you're here. Would you like to say a few words while you have the opportunity?
Yeah.
My wife says I'm never allowed to. I'll take an opportunity to speak.
And your wife is always right.
Yeah.
This puts you on record and on the video.
Okay.
So just maneuver the microphone around. Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name's Bob Sproul, for those I haven't met. I've been in the community. I've lived here for 5 years. I've been coming here for about 25 years, as my wife was born here. I recently retired from federal government service, so I had some more time on my hands. I've been spending more time volunteering in the community. I really like this community. And I really found out how Parks and Recreation impacts people when I became a Little League board president back in Seattle about 10 years ago. And I always took it for granted, all the things that Parks and Rec does for a community. And I really think it's kind of the vital heart of the community. I'm a sports nut, but my mom, who's 86 years old, who just moved here, loves walking around Hordman Pond. So there's so many things for people, or whether it's a concert. So I really want to support that, and I have the time to do it, and I appreciate you letting me have the opportunity.
Thank you.
Well, we appreciate you for volunteering. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
you.
And welcome to the fray. Okay. Next is public comment and mayor's response period. And for the next 15 minutes, divvied up into 3-minute increments, we invite members of the public to come up and speak to the council on items of interest to them that they want us to know about. So all you need to do is come up, name and address, and in 3 minutes, tell us what's on your mind. Okay. No tsunami of people coming up to the podium. Okay, we move on. Next up is the Citizens Commission report, the Human Rights Commission, with James Fry and Ken Fonce. Chief Fry, good to see you.
Honorable Mayor and Council, thank you for having us come tonight. I'd like to have Ken Fonce, the Chair of the Human Rights Commission, come up and give the annual report.
Thanks, Chief. And welcome, Ken.
All right. Hey, thanks, Chief. So, good evening, Mayor, Council members. So, another year went by, I guess. So, always seems to go quick. And so I was just going to go, which one am I doing? There we go. Hit the right button. Go through this really quickly, what we've done and a few upcoming things that we're looking at. And so I just wanted to put this up. These are the commission members right now. We have a full commission. We have 2 high school members on the commission, which is great. One from Paradise Ridge High School and one from Moscow High School, so we get a nice representation that way. So we've got quite a spread there. All right, so starting off with our big social justice forum is Inclusive Communities Month that we hold every September, and so this last September We held this one, and we started it off with a potluck dinner at the 1912 Center, which was very well attended. During COVID, we could not do in-person events, obviously, so we did some online things. So it was nice getting back to doing the community potluck dinner, and we had a really good turnout at that one. Then we held a Stop the Hate workshop. It's a program that is put together by universities, and so UI helped us this one, talking about different levels of hate and how to go about stopping it. Then this one, we brought in a speaker, A Daughter Responds to Racism, Marie Eddy. Her father was a member of the Aryan Nations, and he was the aide to Richard Butler, and her mother divorced him and took the kids and left because she did not want the children to be raised in hate. And so her mother then wrote a book on this, and her mother has since passed, but she travels around speaking about their family, her mother's responses and all of that. And so that was really, really interesting. And by the way, just so you know, that is not her real name. She has to go under an assumed name because of death threats. So she has to have the pseudonym everywhere she goes. So, and then we held a restorative justice forum. And so this was the second of our restorative justice forums, and we have another one coming up in September for the next Inclusive Communities Month. And so the whole idea behind restorative justice, if you're not familiar with it, Maureen can tell you. She can talk to you hours about this, but it's basically of how to bring people together to heal wounds, get past problems, issues, and that sort of thing. So in a productive way. And this particular one was showed us how it worked by looking at an incident where there was a shooting and all of the other stuff that went with it, and how you, in a small community in Idaho, and how they brought people back together and trying to move past that. So some really interesting things. All right, other activities that we did. We always participate in the Great Moscow Food Drive with the Latah County Human Rights Task Force, and we'll be doing that again, and I'll mention that again in a minute. We always participate in the Pride Festival every year, and so we did this again. And the Pride Festival is now meeting in person again and doing things, and it's picking up speed again. You know, it got small after COVID, and now it's building back up again. We held Indigenous Peoples Day at Friendship Square. We had a drum group, a Nimipu drum group, and then a Nimipu elder speaking. And so that went really well, and the weather held nicely for us. You never know in October what it's going to be like, but it didn't rain on us. It wasn't too freezing, so it worked out pretty well. We always participate in the MLK Human Rights Breakfast, co-sponsoring with the Latah County Human Rights Task Force. And so we did that again in January of this year. We are at the market. We were at the market August and September of last year and June of this year. And actually, I was at the market Saturday doing it again. So we just, that one's not on there, but this is again. And the main reason we do this is, one, just to be present, to be noticeable. All of the commissions, as you're aware, do this. And we also then advertise events, things that are coming up, whatever happens to be going on at the time. Now, Juneteenth celebration we held on June 19th this year, and it was a huge success. And it was co-sponsored by a lot of different groups, as you can see the sponsors on there. And it was held in conjunction with Pullman and WSU. So it was UI, Moscow, Pullman, WSU. We held it here. We're talking next year, we might hold it in Pullman. The idea is to have one Palouse Juneteenth and switch back and forth as part of this, because last year we each held one. There was a miscommunication. They were at the same time on the same day, and there was a lot of conflict with trying to get speakers and people. And we said, we're not going to do that again. So we combined it. And it was outrageously successful. If you count the kids, we probably had 40 kids running around. We had almost 300 people attend it. And so it was a excellent turnout and real good. And then in the evening at the Kenworthy, we showed the movie The Watermelon Woman as part of it as well. And so at the celebration at Friendship Square, we had speakers, we had music, we had food, we had activities. The Moscow Food Co-op was selling for donation, not selling, but taking donations, brownies, and then doing screen printing of T-shirts and bags. And so, it was our biggest one yet. And hopefully this will be setting the stage for everything to come. We've been promoting the bias reporting system, and there's our new flyer, which has been approved by Mia. So we're good there. And so we've been advertising that. I don't know if anybody's actually calling it, but we're getting the word out about it. So that people are aware that it exists. All right, so that was our year. For this last year, all of our activities. We had a couple social justice forums we were trying to get done this last year, but they have kept getting postponed because of speakers and problems. And so, we're going to try them this year to continue. And so we'll be at the market again. Like I said, I was there on Saturday, and we'll do it at the market again in August and October. August 5th is a great Moscow food drive again. And so I want to majorly advertise that. We'll be at the farmers market and at East City Park on the corner, taking donations for the food banks in town, and cash donations are also always accepted. And actually, many times cash is great and the food banks prefer it because then they can use that to fill direct needs that they have. Because a lot of times people who donate food, which is wonderful, but they all donate kind of the same things. And so we have gaps, and the cash helps fill the gaps. And so we'll be in both locations. Come out, see us, give us food, give us money, so we can help the food banks. We'll be at the Pride Festival again this year in August, so we'll be doing that as well. And I've been arranging for a much larger Pride March this year. I very foolishly last year said the Pride March wasn't very good. Maybe I should do it this year. And they said, yes, what a great idea. And so I'm in charge of the march. And so I should know better than to say those things. But anyway, it'd be great. So we've got it all set up. Inclusive Community Month, this theme this September is belonging. And so we are going to start it off with a potluck again. So we're going to do the potluck. We are going to have a restorative justice forum as part of it. We're also doing a forum titled What Are Human Rights? And actually that's going to be right after the potluck. The idea being to educate the public. What are human rights? Why are they important? So it's kind of a more basic one. Then we're going to do the restorative justice. We're partnering with the Moscow Film Society to show a film at the Kenworthy on belonging. And so we're working that one out. And there's some other things possibly too, but those aren't finalized yet. But that's what we have finalized so far. We'll do Indigenous Peoples Day again in October. The big thing we're looking at there is we've been holding it in the evening, late afternoon, 4 or 5 o'clock. We're talking, should we continue to do that when the weather's more iffy? Should we do a lunchtime one over lunch when it's more busy downtown? We've got to decide exactly when we're going to hold it. This year coming up again is the Ismat and Manan Sheikh Community Unity Award. It's time in November again for that one. It happens every other year. And so, and then we'll participate in the MLK Human Rights Breakfast again with the task force. We do this every year. And it's starting to get back. This last one was both online and in person. And so it went really well, the in-person part. So hopefully we'll continue doing that, getting these things back a little bit more back to normal. And they're out of order. But anyway, there's Ismat and Manam Sheikh. The Community Unity Award is we give it every other year to someone in the community, it can be an individual or group that has done work in community involvement, being inclusive, that type of thing, because of the work that the Shakes did in the community. I'm not sure if all of you are familiar with them, but they started the annual Thanksgiving Day dinner that would be held every year for everybody who had nowhere to go for Thanksgiving, and it became huge, and plus many, many other things. And so this award is in their honor, that we keep it going. All right, and that is it, unless there are any questions.
Questions up and down the line? None. Well
you.
explained.
Okay, good.
Thank you, Ken.
You want me to keep it to less than 10 minutes, so there you
We
go.
love it. Thanks.
You did it.
Thank you.
Great work.
Well, we'll see you in another year where you'll say, oh,
Well-
is it another year
Well,
already?
hopefully, I'll see you at events.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Not wait a year till you see me again, come see me at other things.
Yep.
Come say hi at the farmer's market when I'm there in August and October, so. Of
course.
And bring us food for the food drive. So,
Cool.
all right, okay, thank you
Ken.
very much.
Okay, next up is a public hearing on ordinance amending Title IV, Chapter 5, Chapter 8, and Chapter 10 of the Moscow City Code regarding procedures for appeals. Way a public hearing works is we hear the presentation from staff. Council can ask some questions. Then we move to public comment in favor of, in opposition to, or of a general nature, after which the council deliberates and comes to a conclusion on this topic. So at this point, public hearing is open. Cody, okay, go for it.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. This item, as you mentioned, is an amendment to clarify some of our procedural requirements associated with appeals. You saw this previously. We had it at committee, and then in May, and then the Planning and Zoning Commission actually conducted a hearing on this in June. The amendment that was included in your packet or is proposed addresses appeals of both zoning administrator decisions to the Board of Adjustment and P&Z decisions then to City Council. We believe, as we've explained before, that all of this is necessary to provide a clearer process for the consideration of appeals for everyone involved. The standards for appeals, as we've talked about before, were historically located in multiple sections of city code as well as a separate resolution. This is really unnecessary and quite confusing for users to maintain both multiple ordinance provisions and a resolution to work through these things. So council took the first step in cleaning this up by repealing a resolution back in May. This amendment that's before you tonight is kind of the second or final step to finish cleaning things up. So I'll just walk through the highlights with you briefly. So the first thing the amendment does, it includes a repeal of Chapter 10, Section 10-8, and that alone eliminates the appeal provisions being located in two separate chapters of the code. Includes the remaining substantive changes are all in Chapter 8. That includes Section 8-2, which addresses again the appeals of administrative or zoning administrator decisions. It also includes changes to Section 8-5 or appeals to City Council. Both of these sections will now include grounds for which appeals can be filed. Both will also include specific direction on how an appeal will be handled both before and during the public meeting. Both also provide specifics on how the meeting itself will be handled. And then finally, it codifies language on just how actions council might take when you're considering the appeal. Finally, I would just mention, as we did before, that the amendment includes a cleanup of a couple incorrect references, as well as a table of contents to make things clear. Again, the Planning and Zoning Commission did conduct a public hearing themselves back in June and supported the request. As you saw in the record, there was a little bit of confusion or questioning around maybe the need for additional definitions. And honestly, from a staff perspective, we probably could have answered things a little bit better in that we already do have a definition in code for affected person, which comes into play for appeals. And then the standards themselves make it clear that you can have an applicant, city representative, or an affected person file the appeal. So with that, we don't believe any additional changes are needed for the amendment that was included in your packet this evening. And so we are recommending you conduct the public hearing tonight, and then upon considering any testimony presented, approve the ordinance under suspension of the rules that require three complete separate readings, and that you read it by title and publish by summary. Thank you.
Okay, quick and easy.
I just have one quick question.
Okay.
I meant to ask you this before, but forgot. I'm always curious what comes about to have a realization that something like this needs to be done. What was the factor that you're like, oh gosh, we need to look at this and clean up? Do you remember?
I think we had an appeal, I think it was a Board of Adjustment decision regarding bed and breakfast here a while back, and just helping them navigate, helping the applicant in that case navigate things, and then helping council prepare for the hearing.
Yeah.
It was pretty clear we had some conflicting elements to code. So
Thank you.
just through practice.
Yeah, I just always, there's always one thing that's like, man, we really got to
Yeah.
think about this because there's so many things you don't. So I thought that might be it, but I didn't remember for sure. Thank you.
So being kind of a process person, I always appreciate it when we see process questions come up and then clarifying those.
Okay.
and making
So this
sure
was
that-
just kind of for the question time.
Oh.
We get to the public input and then we get to deliberation time. It's one of those things that we're supposed to do. So at this time, is there any public comment in favor of this? Again, like before, it's come up the podium, name, address, and tell us what you think. Any testimony in opposition?
We can make Cody get out of the way if that's intimidating to
If that's what's holding you up, testimony of a general nature.
Hot
Okay,
topic.
hearing none, public hearing is closed. Council, please deliberate. Or make a motion or something.
Thanks for cleaning that up, Cody. I
you.
thought you just sat at home and read city code and
Yeah.
found it.
I'm kind of a code nerd, but I think Bill and me are equally guilty of being code nerds.
I am 100% into making our government more approachable and more understandable for all of the citizens. And I will tell you, I was even unclear. And I don't know how many times I asked Mia the same question during at least one of those appeals. So awesomeness, thank you. I'm glad that you guys are nerds enough to read this. 'Cause
Send a motion.
Yes, I would like to make a motion that we approve the ordinance under suspension of the rules requiring 3 complete and separate readings, and that it be read by title and published by summary.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, Sandra,
Aye.
Gina,
Aye.
Maureen,
Aye.
Julia,
Aye.
and Drew.
Aye.
Okay, ordinance number 4. So ordinance number 2023-4. An ordinance of the city of Moscow, Idaho, a municipal corporation of the state of Idaho, providing for the repeal of Moscow City Code Title 4, Chapter 10, Section 10-8, procedures for appeals of interpretation or administration, providing for the amendment of Title 4, Chapter 5, Section 5-6D, amending the reference to the section being repealed by this ordinance, providing for the amendment of Title 4, Chapter 8, Section 8-2, amending the appeal process, providing for the amendment of Moscow City Code Title 4, Chapter 8, Section 8-5, appeals to City Council, providing for the amendment of Title 4, Chapter 8, Table of Contents, providing that the provisions of this ordinance be deemed severable, and providing that for this ordinance to be in full effect and full force from the date of its passage, approval, and publication according to law. Good Lord. So that's done.
Amen.
Excellent. Okay, next up, multifamily proposed recycling options. Tyler Palmer and Tim Davis.
Your Honor, Counsel, happy to be here. I am lamentably less of a code nerd than both Bill and Cody, but we do our best to slog through it. Here today to discuss with the council the results of the multifamily work group. The council will recall that in 2021, we conducted a rate study for the sanitation utility, which is a routine process that we go through to make sure that our rates are in alignment with the cost of delivering the service and that they're distributed in an equitable way between classes. Through that process, we convene a citizen advisory committee, and that committee helps review the rates as we work through the process of taking a look at the rates and making sure that there is that equity within those processes. One of the items that came out of that citizen committee was a desire to look at the availability of our single stream recycling service, our curbside recycling service to the multifamily sector. Now, while that wasn't the purview of the sanitation rates study, it was something that as a result of that, the council and mayor asked us to convene a work group to specifically look at that issue as we completed the rate study. And so that work group was convened in August of 2022. And we're very grateful to the folks who participated in that work group. We had Alita Mackey, Dan Schoenberg, Marita McClellan, Brian Points, Brandon Steely Johnson, and Stevie Steely Johnson, who all participated and were supported by city staff. The committee met on 3 occasions with multiple documents and emails volleyed back and forth over the course of several months as we worked through alternatives to better providing service. The real challenge that we have with the multifamily sector that as the service was launched, the curbside service, Moscow is a little bit of a different animal in that we are a university town. And so we have a lot of turnover, and within the recycling sector, especially with a lot of the volatility in the recycling center, contamination is a real concern when it comes to recyclables. And so as the program was launched, having a large container get contaminated is much more difficult to deal with than a smaller container getting contaminated. A smaller container, you end up just throwing it in the trash, and it's not as much volume that ends up getting put into the solid waste stream as it would be were it a larger container. And so the program was launched with 95-gallon containers as the receptacle for the single stream curbside service. That reality made it difficult practically for the service to be provided to some of our multifamily locations. And so we didn't have nearly as high a percentage of utilization of the program among the multifamily sector as we had among, for example, just the single family residential sector. And so the work group convened and we looked at several different alternatives and options. And what we're presenting today is some findings that we have in your packet. You will see a summary, an executive summary of the activities of the work group, along with a memo from Tim Davis that describes what we're proposing. The basics are a 3-tier system that we are proposing today, and we will continue to work on the problem. And ideally in the future, we would love to be able to add some different size containers. There are some obstacles right now that make that something that we're not able to propose in this iteration of revisions, but we think we've got some revisions in place that will help inject some equity into the system and help provide a more customized approach for the level of service that we're practically able to provide to some of these facilities. So with that, I'm going to have Tim Davis walk through what that entails, and then we will be happy to field any questions y'all might have.
Hello, Tim.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. The 3 options that we would like you to consider, the first standard option would be the curbside single stream as it stands now. That would serve as the default option. The second option would be a smaller base fee just for Moscow Recycling Services and contract of multifamily management company or ownership would contract directly with LSI Inland North Waste for a cardboard only dumpster recycling. And then the third option would be finally just the $1.50 base fee for the recycling center options. And in the memo in your packet, you'll see that we did run a pilot program at 4 different sites, fairly large sites. We used 4 cubic yard dumpsters for cardboard, and we estimated that we recovered about 41 tons over that time, almost a year and a half probably that program's been running. A 4-yard container can yield almost 8 tons annually per year, assuming that it's full, picked up once a week. So it seems to be a good option. Cardboard accounts for about 70% of all the recyclables that we process at Moscow Recycling. It's bulky, it takes up a lot of space, but it's, with packaging these days and folks ordering from Amazon and so forth, I mean, cardboard's just, it's everywhere, and it's easy to recover. I mean, it's simple. So that's where we're at.
Questions?
I have a couple questions. I appreciate you both coming back, Tim, Tyler. I know you guys have been working hard on this, and I've been chewing on this since last meeting, and I recognize from one, I'm new to council, so you probably talked about this multiple times until this point. And I recognize the work, and I know that there's been a lot of other citizens that have been involved. And so I think the effort to resolve it, I see that, and I think we're moving in the right direction. So any of the questions I have, I've been chewing on. And then lastly, before I kind of dive into it with a couple questions is, the way that I'm trained, and I do this on a daily basis. I work on multifamily complexes across the country, and so unfortunately, a large part of my job is dealing with this. And so, for better or for worse, this might be good for Moscow for me to understand it this way. But my questions don't reflect any of the work that you've specifically done or anyone else. It's just questions, and probably just to get me up to speed with all the work that you've done. And so, a couple of those have to do with. I tried looking, and maybe it was in the packet buried deeper, but when did we start recycling in Moscow for just like single users, and when did multifamily come on? Like how many years ago roughly?
We started the single string program in 2016, I believe it was, and we started residential and multifamily residents at the same time.
Okay.
Originally, we were doing single family 1 week and we were doing multifamily on the opposite week. So it was still biweekly collection, but the program began for both in 2016.
Okay. So we've been up and running for a little while with both of those. Yeah. What was the initial, and I know that these, if we need to get the numbers later, I know this has nothing to do with stuff moving forward, but compared to single use residents, compared to multifamily, what was like the utilization of both of those metrics, right? Because those are two different user groups. One potentially has more per pickup. Like what have we seen the trends of that, of how much quantity they're using or not using?
Are you talking about participation?
Yeah, participation.
Okay. I don't have exact numbers because we do
Yeah.
not track the carts, but it's well over 90% for residential single stream. When we first started the program, I believe we had in the neighborhood of 65 to 70% participation rate by complex of the multifamilies. That's dropped down to about 38% now. That's
Okay.
not meaning every unit has a cart, but 38% of the multifamily complexes utilize the service.
Okay. And I know this isn't I know you don't memorize these stats, but I think
Apparently they do.
I mean, you do have some of them memorized, but I mean, this stat that I'm gonna say is, I don't know how you could recall it, right? Unless you got it in your back pocket, is, I think when we talk about it, it's good to talk about metrics and, how many multifamilies do we have here in general, and how many are using it compared to, because that 38%, it's hard to gauge, are they bigger or smaller? Like, where do they fall into? And what is that a 4-plex or is that a 28-plex, right? Because that has a huge difference to do how we're collecting it, right? And I'm sure it's there. I don't expect that information tonight.
He's pulling it out right now.
This is impressive. Look at him. Look at this guy on camera.
We have approximately 4,200 units.
Okay.
Of that, we have about 186 complexes currently participate. In numbers of carts out there, we've got 407. So we're 10% of every unit participates, if you want to look at it that way.
If you look at it as a cart per unit,
Yeah.
then it would be about that.
Roughly, yeah. Yeah, okay. This is great. I mean, damn. And I'm not trying to, for the record, I'm not trying to stump anyone with these numbers. I'm not pulling this out to try to stump you down. I'm very impressed, and I'm just looking for ballpark stuff. And I mean, I can ask 2 more questions, and then I'll be quiet, Mr. Mayor. And I apologize. So you guys can get home. And I totally recognize that in recycling, there's been some huge shifts national-wide, how we take care of this, and I recognize there's been a burden on how we collect recycling. And I know it sounds like in past meetings with negotiation to control contamination is difficult, as you mentioned, in large batches, right? And so, looking at 200 to 300 gallon totes, I think would be a better way to do that. I know we've recognized that. So my question is, like, when we're talking about contracts, when we're doing this, when does the contract expire, when we can talk about this issue again?
So we're not limited in talking about the issue to contract expiration. That's something that we have within the contract, the ability to request from our contractor a price for any sort of additional service that the city requests. And we did submit a request to our contractor for the addition of 200 and 300 gallon totes in recognition that they would probably be more feasible for several of the facilities that we're dealing with. The financials of that did not come back very well. That ultimately the price that we got back was high, was so high that it was unlikely that people would select that option because it was significantly higher than, so for example, a 300 gallon tote was significantly more than 395 gallon totes would have been. And so you're getting the equivalent volume, but it was significantly more expensive. And so one of the things that we've talked about is continuing to research ways to potentially bring the cost down on that, whether it be through routing, researching different receptacles. There also are some examples of places that have thresholds. So for example, you can have, up to this number of units can have 95 gallon, and then you're automatically moved up a tier if you have more than X number of units. That you dictate the receptacle size based on the size of the facility. That's how some places have dealt with that. And so those are some of the things that we'll continue to research to try and find good mechanisms for. But really, it just boiled down to the economics of the thing. That it was just such a large amount and such a large discrepancy between what the 200 and 300 gallon came in at and what our 95s were at, that it just wasn't a financially feasible thing to propose.
I mean, you both have continued to shock me with data, and so again, not expecting a direct answer with this, but for other, we'll say in the Pacific Northwest, how other sanitation companies are dealing with this, is that such a high discrepancy to their users where they're not? Because it seems like it's so high. The question is why? What's driving the cost of it?
We have a few unique factors in our system. I mean, partly it's driven by the contract that we have. We have a contract in place that was negotiated, and so there was a rate that was established. And when fairly closely on the heels of the establishment of that rate and the way that it was structured, it's complex because when the rate is structured, they're looking at the rate that they can get for the recyclable materials themselves, so the compensation that can come in for that. We have a different condition in our transportation is much further. And so, on the west side, a lot of the MRFs, the processing facilities are over there. And so one of the big complications and expensive factors for us is our geographic isolation. We have to haul everything a long way to get anything done with it. And so that impacts it, but then also just the rate structure, when the rate was negotiated, how it was negotiated also plays into that and factors into that.
Okay. I had some more questions, but my laptop's dying, so I can email to you later.
One
But
of
I
the
appreciate
other
the
things
yeah.
that drives the cost of those containers is the cost of fuel. Obviously, they're made of plastic, which hydrocarbons, petrol. So when we went out and asked for 200 and 300 gallon cart sizes, for instance, up on the university for their recycling program, those costs came in astronomically high compared to what we paid for carts back in 2016. So there's a cost difference there as well.
Yeah, and I recognize that, especially in the last couple of years, cost prices have gone through the roof for a lot of things for infrastructure cost. And I know we're kind of dealing with different animals here and how and why, and no one really knows why, I think. I mean, there's some assumptions, but it seems like when we want to improve systems, especially when we're talking about sanitation, we boil down, it's back to cost. And I know that's important, but my worry is as we move in the future and we talk about multifamily, we talk about affordable housing, that these costs are they're being directed that, one, they're going to fall onto the property owner, which then usually, not all the time, will fall onto the people that are renting the property. And so I think in next round of negotiation, we're talking about contract, really working with the vendor to see, well, what is driving it and getting down to the why. I recognize that we have to take it longer, but I don't think we're unique in our community to other communities, maybe in the Pacific Northwest, but I think there's other communities with our size that have some of these similar issues that we can look to as case studies to resolve this. And so I know our city staff's doing everything in our time. That's just my perspective that I'm seeing. So appreciate you answering my questions.
I
And coming
really
back tonight.
appreciate the insight, Drew, and I think you're absolutely spot on. As part of this process for the multifamily, staff did a review of several entities that have similar conditions. So we looked at places like Bozeman and Missoula, university towns, inland Northwest, geographically isolated, and took a hard look at their systems to see what their rates were, how they were structured, and how they were negotiating those. And there were some good things that we're able to glean from those programs. And so I think that there is the potential for us to further refine these programs, but I think that this first cut with the 3-tiered program does allow for us to better suit the actual practical delivery of service to what the properties have and the reality that we have on the ground today.
Okay. Thank you for my exhaustive
We
list.
appreciate it.
I appreciate it.
Anybody else? Gina?
When you did the pilot studies, what kind of feedback did you get from the complex owners and that sort of thing? What'd you get?
A couple check-ins to see how things were going contamination-wise. We had very little, if any, contamination, keeping it just cardboard only. Other than that, not really a lot.
So no feedback from the residents or anything like that?
Not to me directly, no.
Okay. Can I talk to one of the,
If you want to drag him up here.
you want to come up here, please, Mr. Schoenberg? I'm not dragging either. I'm more suggesting,
Encouraging.
encouraging. Yeah.
Excellent.
So name, address, all.
Dan Schoenberg, 1009 Red Tail Lane here in Moscow, Idaho. And I'm co-owner of Plus Properties here in Moscow.
Was one of your properties involved at all in the pilot study?
Actually, two.
Two, okay. How'd it go from your side? And I'm not
No,
questioning theirs.
I think from a
sides.
cardboard standpoint, it went fairly well.
Okay.
We learned some things with it. We had 2 different locations. And so when we start to look at the feasibility of looking at the options that are there, it's going to be restrictive based upon site. And what I mean by that is if a cardboard-based container is near regular solid waste dumpsters, it doesn't work nearly as well as when I can place a cardboard container separated from the solid waste dumpsters in a facility. So we had 2 sites. We had 230 Baker Street, and that was one where the solid waste and the cardboard, just because of site location, had to be close together, and that had more contamination than we did at 1105 West A Street, which was separated almost at opposite ends of the parking lot, and we saw a lot less contamination there. One of the things in terms of, I think, the potential to increase utilization is, and Tyler and I have been talking about this, is communication. And so we're used to within the sanitation system of being able to send out communications with the monthly bills. None of that communication gets to any multifamily. That bill goes to a property manager and an owner. So there's an opportunity for a lot of education in terms of recycling and recycling opportunities in the community. Even with things as simple as, we have the Tire Amnesty Day. And if tenants have in their closet 4 snow tires that are all worn out and they want to get rid of them, they generally don't even know that that option exists for them in the community, because we don't have a good way to communicate with them. I've talked about the ability, and so I'm skeptical of, or I'm hesitant is a better word. I'm very hesitant to create my own communication and say, here's how recycling works, and then be wrong.
Yeah.
And then they show up someplace and it's not the free day, or they do X, Y, Z, and it's not within the protocol of the system. But to be able, but on the other hand, as we learned during COVID, we have a great ability to be able to communicate directly to a large percentage of our community digitally. So if we could get those communications in a digital format, we have the capacity to be able to direct those out to either a link by text or an email and raise the awareness. I would think that within the multifamily arena, we would be able to, as an example, with locations that work with cardboard recycling, with some encouragement at move in and move out times in particular, that those, my guess would be that that cardboard dumpster would be overflowing before we got through a week. And other times of the year it wouldn't be. And we would just have to monitor that and look for an additional pickup associated to it.
I remember back in the day, I think you were ranting, if I remember correctly.
Oh my.
And there was a concern in the conversation about the fact that the utilization wasn't there and you were being charged anyway. Does this 3-tiered setup or the proposal, does that more closely meet the criteria there, or?
Well, I think it does. I mean, the basis of the conversation came out of the rate study.
Yeah.
And I will say that the questions about that started clear back in 2016 for me. So it had been a continuation of how many rate studies? 2 or 3? Yeah, of asking the same question to the point that we get here that we're actually resolving some of the issue. It does it from the standpoint of if a site doesn't qualify for it, and we don't know yet what those criteria are for qualification. So as an example, and we use this as a good example, at 621 Taylor. Anybody ever been down Taylor Street, right beside the institution, right across from Fraternity and Sorority Row? There is not space for parking, let alone another dumpster. It is just infeasible to even think about doing recycling there, and then to think about doing it without contamination.
Right.
So this resolves that issue of being charged for services that are not functionally usable. But yet still keeping access to the recycle. If I have tenants who really want to recycle, here's your answer.
Yep.
You can take your recycling, you can package it up, you can take it to the recycling center, and you have full access to the recycling center. So it does that.
Okay.
I think the other good thing in this formula is that based on what I see right now, so I'm going to qualify that because I can't find the inland waste actual contract, if you will, for cardboard services. We have a number from them, but I don't totally understand that. It looks like there's about a $17 difference between renting the cardboard dumpster and using standard City of Moscow solid waste dumpster services on a per yard basis, round figures. So think about it from this standpoint, from a provider, from an owner standpoint who's looking for services, there's a financial advantage to removing as much cardboard that's going in the dumpster as you can. And for every month that you have that full dumpster, if I can take a dumpster out of circulation at that property, there's a $17 savings per month to do that. And that's for a 1-yarder.
Yeah.
So if I've got a 12-unit building, what that equates to is over $1 per month per tenant on rent. And the next time we look at rent rate increases, if we can do that kind of protocol and see that it proves itself, that means we have to raise rent $1 less a month per tenant. And that means something in our community.
Yeah.
Because you add those numbers up over time, it's a big deal. It's a big deal.
I appreciate that. I was hoping to hear a little bit of positive out of you with this discussion, and I do think it is closer to the mark, at least the way I understood it. So I appreciate that explanation, and that's all the questions I have for Mr. Schoenberg, who had to get drug up here to the mic.
Thank you, Dan.
Are you going to do open comment yet?
Well, you might as well.
As long as I'm here?
Yeah, while you're there.
So for Mr. Davis's information or background piece on this, I'd also direct him to, because you weren't here, a letter that I wrote back on May 15th of 2022 as part of the sanitation study presentation and acceptance here. And some of the numbers in 22, I enumerated there in terms of the distribution of multifamily in the community. I didn't go into great detail on that. And so for clarification and everybody's edification on some of that, when we're looking at recycling services, and how from a code standpoint and a county standpoint, we classify multifamily. Multifamily falls in the category of everything from 5 units up. Buildings that are 4, 5, 6 units, I think we almost probably 95% have recycling roll carts at them. It's a small enough community, it functions, and it works. It's when we get to the larger complexes, 12 and above, and locations and type of property. So when I say type of property, we have properties that we advertise that we do not allow undergraduate students unless they are a traditional family, so a non-traditional student, a household unit that allows that. That way we stay kosher with the fair housing rules, right? Some people say, well, it's discrimination when you don't offer undergraduate students housing everywhere. Well, undergraduate students by themselves are not a protected class. So we're able to do that. We find that in some of the larger complexes, in family-oriented units, we can be a little more successful in recycling than we can in traditional student housing. I'm going to go back to the comment I made on education. So we might be able to affect that by education. I wish we were talking about totes because that's really attractive to us as a provider. But anyway, there's a letter. I'd invite you to get a hold of that letter, and there's a lot of information in there. And how I calculated utilization and how many units are in multifamily. And I did a pretty exhaustive survey myself around town of counting these units to try to get to that number. So I did an inventory. I put a margin of error in it. And then the other thing I'm interested to see is that I provided an Excel chart in that about utilization, a tonnage basis of recycling, what it's done over a period of time. I'm waiting for some updated numbers, which they'll get me for some of the 2022 numbers and see what's happening. And one of the concerns has been that we're just seeing a continual drop of tonnage. Now, some of that's been commodity based, and we get that. But it's been a continual drop in that over the years. And so we've got drop in tonnage and price going up, and that's a concern.
Sorry, tonnage of recycling or tonnage of garbage?
Tonnage of recycling. Tonnage of recycling has dropped.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Dan.
Yep.
Well, while we're up here, anybody else like to make comments relative to this item? Okay, any other questions, city council people?
No, I think it's great that you're trying to work with multifamily housing to allow them to do more recycling like single-family housing does. Thank you. I know it was a lot of work to get here.
And also working in a way that feels equitable. It satisfies some of the issues that you raised last year.
I do have one additional question, and I promise I'll pipe down. How long will this approach be in place before we measure it?
We'll be able to measure consistently. That's one of the things that we really want to do is monitor the program. So we'll, with council's approval, then staff will go about drafting the necessary forms and communicating out to our multifamily users. And it's something that we'll have metrics for because they'll be registering for the level of service that's appropriate for their property. And so we'll be able to start tracking where that utilization is at.
Excellent. Okay,
Cool.
thank you.
My ears await a motion.
I move that we approve the 3-tiered option for multifamily recycling services.
Second.
Hey, Julia seconded. Okay, Sandra,
Aye.
Gina,
Aye.
Maureen,
Aye.
Julia,
Aye.
and Drew.
Aye.
Very good. Well done. Thank you, staff folks. Thank you for all the people that participated in the study and the work that went into establishing this. Well done. Okay, and last up, we have a proposed amendment to Title II, Chapter 2. Bill Belknap.
Apparently being the code nerd that I am, we're going to move on to another ordinance to amend city code. So the draft ordinance before you really has three purposes specifically. Recently, as we've had either council presidents or council vice presidents serve as the mayor in the mayor's absence, there have been confusion about that member's ability to vote on motions before the council when they're acting as a mayor who normally just chairs the meeting and only votes in the case of a tie. So we did want to clarify that a council member that serves in that capacity is not relinquishing their right to be able to vote on matters before the council. So Section 2 and Section 3 of the ordinance address two sections of city code that identify the council president and the council vice president, their roles and duties, and also addresses their ability to serve as mayor during the mayor's absence. And this adds language to clarify that such members shall also be counted towards the quorum of the council and shall retain the duties and powers of the council member while serving as mayor. So just really the goal was try to help clarify that question that had come up a couple of times recently. The second item is related to the council committees. So these committees are comprised of half of the council for each, so 3 members of the council serve on each of the committees. The committee membership is established at the first meeting of the council, first meeting of the year, and they comprise the administrative committee and the public works finance committee. The city code provides some description about the topics that each of the committees normally address. So for the administrative committee, it refers to matters concerning police, fire, parks, recreation, community development, legal, personnel, and other administrative matters. For the public works finance committee, the code notes that it is public works activities, solid waste issues, and financial matters, including insurance, are the typical topics there. Recently, due to kind of a light number of agenda items, we've been kind of alternating cancellation of meetings, and that's forced certain committees to address topics that are maybe outside of what's described in the city code. So the second feature of the ordinance is to state that in the cancellation of one committee, the other committee can consider all topics. So just to clarify that, so there isn't any concern about what committee was reviewing a particular topic. Then the third feature, and we've had this also fairly routinely, where we've had members of a committee that are unable to make their meeting and are asking other members of the other committee to sit in their stead and act as kind of their proxy during that committee meeting. They're not officially a member of the committee, so we're just clarifying that that essentially a member of the Public Works Finance Committee may attend in place of an administrative committee member who's unable to attend, and vice versa for the other committee. So it's just a few housekeeping items to clarify those. There was, when this was reviewed at committee last week, there was a request. I think initially we had the draft stating that a member can request another member to serve in their stead. We do have it sometimes happen somewhat spontaneously where somebody maybe is delayed or can't make it, and somebody in the audience just steps up to the table and helps fill that out. So we did remove the requirement of the kind of the request of the member asking for somebody to serve in their capacity if it happens in that nature. So with that, I'd be happy to try to answer any questions that the council might have.
Gina?
This may be my very favorite ordinance ever because it's simplification and it's clarifying, and it really, again, makes it easy for Joe Public to wander in and understand what happens. So I'm not going to make a motion because I'm the first one to talk, but I think it's awesome.
So kind of-
Go Maureen, then
I personally think that being a code nerd is a compliment and not an insult. So I would
Really
wear it
was.
with honor.
It didn't feel that way, but it's okay.
T-shirt right here. So good.
Sandra.
No insult to you, there, Tyler, no insult.
The one question I
Other
have, I'm
comments?
all for this, but what happens if there is somebody acting as mayor and there's a tie?
Then the motion would fail.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that,
Yeah, unless you
I
can
thought I might have
prevail,
made that
then
up
it
in my
fails
head.
by default. Correct.
okay, thank you.
Oh, parliamentary procedure.
Wow.
Goodness.
Parliamentary procedure nerd too.
Anybody
That's
down
awesome.
there?
I just can't believe this hasn't come up before. Like,
It did come up for
how
us.
long have
We
we
did.
not really
Yeah.
known
It's like-
if the,
It was
Yeah.
back here when you were the
Sandra
president.
When I was, yeah.
mayor.
And you
Yeah,
were
it's
not allowed to
happened
vote.
twice in the last 18 months that
Right.
I've served in this capacity. And, I've consulted with me and it just is unclear as the code is currently structured. So we can clarify that.
Awesome.
Sandra.
I move that we approve the ordinance under suspension of the rules requiring 3 complete and separate readings and that it be read by title and published by summary.
Second.
Oh, we'll give that one to Drew.
Yeah.
Okay. Drew,
Aye.
Julia,
I,
Maureen,
Aye.
Gina,
Aye.
and Sandra.
Aye.
Okay, that one passes. And so we have ordinance number 2023-5. An ordinance of the city of Moscow, Idaho, a municipal corporation of the state of Idaho, providing for the amendment of Moscow City Code Title II, Chapter 2, Sections 2-15, 2-16, 2-17, and 2-18, clarifying the duties and powers of the council president and vice president while acting as the mayor in the mayor's absence, providing for the ability of committee members to temporarily serve in place of another, and for council committees to consider all matters upon cancellation of the other council committee meeting, providing that the provisions of this ordinance be deemed severable, and providing for this ordinance to be in full force and effect from the date of its passage, approval, and publication according to law. So
Great.
that is just poetry. Next up is council reports. So, Maureen, what you got?
That the URA had one candidate by the time it came up with a decision. I don't know if I talked about that the last time or not, but now we're into the exclusive negotiation agreement with that one candidate, or the one proposal.
For the 6th and Jackson
6th and
property.
Yeah.
Okay, the farmer's market meeting was amazing this last time. I've been on the farmer's market now for the whole year, but what was interesting from my perspective is they were very deliberate in a way that it's kind of like their investigations and their site visits are so thorough. And so then there became a huge discussion around the table for a long time about how that all went. And what I appreciated was also a human perspective on it, which was, okay, so this may not be in compliance right now, but they bought those animals and they expect to sell those animals this summer. It's hard to pull it now. And so they're really on notice for the next year. And I was so impressed being on the human, just sitting there as the liaison, because they worked so hard and we were there for a long time negotiating out very little things. So I appreciated the farmer's market.
Gina.
Historic Preservation met, and Nils Reese is back in full force.
Yes,
We
he
can all
is.
say he's happy and healthy. He handed us some reading material in the meeting. They're looking at Orchid Awards and discussing which houses, and it's fascinating. These guys in that meeting can actually just say, well, it's 1223 East E, and everybody knows about it. It is just the coolest thing. And Elizabeth's daughter is our fearless leader after Nils, and it's wonderful to have just the it's a wide array of people and a wide array of ages, and it's just good stuff. And they work really hard. They're talking about a university historic district. We're starting to have some discussions about that. So there's good stuff happening. Planning and zoning met, and there was a public hearing on a comprehensive plan amendment and a rezone, and a very in-depth conversation about the rezone and R4 and R3 and kind of all of I was, again, very, very impressed. I'm impressed with our staff and the fact that they could completely explain things, and really just a great conversation amongst the members. That will be coming, I think, to us at some point. Let's see. And then at the end, they're reading a book called On Common Ground. Book or an article? I'm asking Victoria. It was kind of a flyery kind of thing. Okay. Victoria is one of our planning and zoning commissioners, and talking about adaptive reuse and the discussions about whether or not Moscow's zoning ordinances are actually impediments to adaptive reuse, and just fascinating. It's really hard to sleep after P&Z because I get all fired up. It is great. So that was another, and these are some hardworking people in both of my commissions. I will tell you that I spent last week representing the city at the Northwest Community Development Institute in Boise. I was the class director for year 3. It's a 3-year well, it can be 4, but normally it's a 3-year program by which community development and economic development professionals achieve national certification. And I achieved mine in 2021. And so I was asked to come and be the class director. And it just renews me every time I go down there. It's an amazing group of people, and they're from all over Oregon, Montana, Washington, Idaho. We had a guy from Illinois in year 3. It was awesome. And it's always cool. There's a lot of cool different ideas, but it's the same reason why we're all there. And it's so awesome. So so I spent a really intense week, and then ended the class at noon on Friday and drove home in time to be at a gig on Saturday. So it was a little bit intense last week, but very, very fulfilling and very good. So that's all I have, sir.
Okay, Julia, what you got?
Well, last week was Public Service Week for the Parker's household. Let's see. I had Public Works and Finance. The Arts Commission was this past week, and we talked about the 3rd Street Gallery schedule this next year, and commission survey questions, which is happening at every commission right now. We got some more donations to the portable collection for the city of Moscow. We also got some public feedback on the Moscow Arts Commission band schedule. So that'll be up next month's Arts Commission. Had Moscow Affordable Housing Trust, who always likes to have a council member on it, even though they're a nonprofit. And then Transportation Commission on the 13th. We discussed questions for the survey also, and there were a lot of good ideas about figuring out how people might answer questions to prioritize what they would like to see in terms of transportation infrastructure, like roads and parking and sidewalks and paths and many, many things. Sorry, I'm looking at Cody because he was there. There are like 16 different little subcategories.
Can you name them? I'm just
I
kidding.
can't because I'm not Tyler. Sorry. Oh, I just wanted to announce that Monday, the 24th, is the Moscow Welcome Table, which is a free, really nice dinner at the 1912 Center. And it's you have to sign up in advance. They serve 100 people.
Sometimes a little over that. Yeah,
Okay.
but about that.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I will be your terrible waitress. So, but it is free. So,
But actually, can we clarify that it's free, but they actually take donations for people who want
They
to
do.
make donations? And then it's usually a local chef that in fact is in charge of the meal?
yeah, this
I mean-
month is Vietnamese food. So it's a great service that's provided and there's no pressure to donate. You can come and just eat. And it was just a lot of fun last month when I did it. So I'm looking forward to it, but I am a terrible waitress. So that is
Look
my
for another
report.
table.
You don't even have to tip me. So that is my report for the last 2 weeks.
Sandra.
I'm going to just tag on to that welcome table really quick because I can tell you that the two local chefs, one is my neighbor and she is an amazing cook. I even eat her vegetables.
Oh my
And
gosh.
anyone up here knows that's something. So, yeah,
Unheard of.
I will not be able to be there and I'm sad about that. But if you're wondering, there are two people on this earth who I will eat anything they cook and she's one of them. So there's that. So I'm excited for that. It's been such a long time, I feel, since we met. I actually filled in on an Arts Commission meeting before that one. And so at that one, I'll just start off and say they talked a lot about murals and trying to set guidelines for murals. It's a very interesting thing going on, talked about different cities that are doing murals and how it can be done. And of course, they're doing it impeccably and trying to have all the I's and T's dotted and crossed and probably in cursive because they're the Arts Commission group, but doing a stand-up job on that. And we also had Art Walk, right? I don't think we've talked about Art Walk since we've met. And it was great. I went all over, hung out at Cafe Artista most of the time, and it was really great to see people come in and out, but also wandered around, got to sign the snowplow. My little neighbor couldn't sign it, so I signed it for him. So love that all that can be done. There were a lot of people there. I think most of you were there. And really just fun to see Moscow getting out and enjoying itself and enjoying the great art that we have here and our many, many artists that come and put so many great things out for our community. Can't wait to see the 3rd Street Gallery pop up again with more interesting things. That was followed quickly. I think that came before Juneteenth. And I was fortunate enough that the mayor asked me to speak at that. And I love Juneteenth. It's right up there for me with St. Patrick's Day. It was a really great event and Ken talked a lot about it. So I won't go into great detail, but really was fun to see so many people there enjoying so many varieties of things, great speakers. Yeah, just a fun group. And I loved especially people that were walking by going, what is this? And I kind of hung out in the back. I'm like, why it's Juneteenth? Come on over. Let me tell you about it. And then push them on forward. So really fun. And I love that we're doing this every year. So please come out next year, whether it's in Moscow or Pullman, and enjoy that and really be a part of that community. Then we went to Boise and had our annual city meetings there. I won't bore you with all the details on that. I don't mean it was boring, but I don't want to go on and on. I will say that the two highlights for me, one, we had a good discussion. I won't say good discussion. We had an interesting discussion about daycare. I can't say it was good because daycare is dismal right now, but it was an interesting discussion and I hope to build on that. And the other thing, and I already told Chief Fry this when he was here earlier, I had a chance to just visit with folks at all city council members throughout. And at the end of the day, they said, hey, is there anything you want to give a shout out for? And I'm like, well, I absolutely would be remiss if I did not give a shout out to not only our great police department, but all our emergency responders and all those that came and helped us in November when tragedy had struck here. And the reason I share this is because first that room went silent and then everyone came up, right? That was the last thing said. So many people came up to talk to me and wanted to know how our town was, wanted to know how our students are, wanted to know about the community and what things are going on. And so I just share that because there's a whole state out there that cares an awful lot about what's going on. And it was really great to see. And I want y'all to know that, in fact, I had one guy from Soda Springs, haven't been there since I was in college. And he said, oh, I just want you to give all those folks a great big hug for me. So I'm not going to physically do that because I'd be exhausted and no one really wants that. But take that essence because he truly meant that. He was just also in awe of what happened. So wanted to share that out. The day I got back Friday, that Saturday was a Palouse fun run. And it was a little bit smaller this year, but great fun because I got to take pictures of dogs and talk to people. So love that to benefit our local humane society. And then we had, 4th of July, and other than the illegal fireworks that went on and on and on and on and on and on, and then on some more, it was an okay night. The URA happened, and I'm glad Maureen touched on that. Excited to build on what happened there. I'm really excited to see something happen on that corner besides feeling compelled to pull weeds. And then, let's see, I had dual engagements one night. I ended up going to Suds with a Scholar last week, and where they talked about Psychiana, and that was fun and interesting. And I have a couple other things on here. It was a busy month, right? Month and a half. 2 quick things coming up because I think we'll have met beforehand. We talked a lot about Pride, that we'll be able to talk more, but no one said the dates. I believe it's August 23rd. It's when the festivities start midweek, and we'll go through like the 27th, the Sunday, the 26th is a big day. Ken talked about the parade and all the festivities going on in the park. And the ice cream social will be July 30th at the Latah County Historical Society. And because I'm on vacation, I get all the times for that because I'm like, great, have fun. Sorry to miss it. But you can look it up, right? Y'all have great skills out there. So Historical Society, McConnell Mansion, go take part in the ice cream social, visit with people, be historical. You don't have to stay long because it's going to be hot, but it should be fun. And I'm sure I forgot something, but that's enough.
Drew, it's you.
Yeah. All right. So Parks and Rec, that's where I've been involved with some meetings. Things are going well from that perspective. They're working hard. Pool is doing well. Had a lot of compliments about how the staff's doing from lifeguards. They're in a good position with staff more than they've anticipated in years past. So that's a great asset to the community. I've been at the pool a lot the last couple of days with my little people. And so, it's just a great facility. And I think it's something that we're lucky to have. Part of that, I also went to the Damian Burton dedication of the pickleball courts.
I know I forgot something. Thanks, Drew.
Yeah, and so Sandra's there, the mayor was there, and I was really touched by. I didn't know Damian Burton here in town, but he got up and talked about a lot of people are giving him a hard time in some of the intro speeches, which was good. But one thing that he said that I thought was important, he got on the Parks and Rec Commission in the year 1989. As a side note, that's a good year when people were born. And he was on it for 30 years. And he originally got on it because he had 3 boys. And his 3 boys, he wanted a place for them to have a new pool. And he wanted new facilities, baseball park, soccer field. None of his boys utilized, the new pool. They're already grown and gone by the time it was done. And then also the rec center, they didn't utilize that or the new ball fields. And to me, that just shows that, I know public service is hard, but if a lot of his efforts didn't go to waste. And I thought it was nice that he took some of his grandkids to those amenities. He no longer lives here. And to me, I think the quote can resonate with anyone that wants to be frustrated or involved in anything civic is, I think communities are successful when an individual plants trees that they won't be able to enjoy the shade of. And so I think Damian Burton is kind of a good example of that. And so it takes a lot of work, a lot of effort, but I'm personally grateful for that. And I also love pickleball. So I like those courts. So that makes a wrap for what I have. So.
Oh, cool. My turn. As Sandra mentioned, I was down at the Association of Idaho Cities meeting down there, and I think it's important that we get people from municipalities up here down there to remind the folks south of McCall that municipalities north of McCall still exist and need to be considered in our legislative procedures and other facts that involve the whole state. Airport board met and had good progress going. The terminal should be done by the 31st of December, should be in operation then. So there'll be a big ribbon cutting sometime around that time.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's coming right along.
How about the flight to Denver? How about the flight to Denver?
That comes on sometime after that. If we
You're
can get,
never satisfied.
actually, the flight to Denver gets to wait until we can work with United Airlines in terms of aircraft and pilots to actually get something in. But yes, there are cash guarantees to get that flight in there. We've secured that grant long since, and we're waiting for the new terminal before we implement it. Also, the new terminal means that the TSA plan for the airport needs to be completely rewritten to get away from the old terminal into the new one. So that's going to be a fairly substantial bit of effort and headache on that. And interestingly, the airport got a hold of a tire dolly to tow aircraft off of the runway without scoring it or ruining their landing gear if they blow a tire on landing. So, who knew you needed a piece of equipment like that? Interesting stuff out there. There was also the ribbon cutting out at Schweitzer's new facility out at the south end of town. And I must say that Schweitzer facility is some kind of amazing on the inside. The amount of robotics and equipment that they've got in there is fantastic. The amount of recycling they do to minimize their output into the wastewater system, amazing. Circuit board production involves dissolving copper off of the boards to provide only the channels for the electricity that are needed. Well, what happens to the rest of the copper? Well, they've got a recovery center in there that recovers the copper back out of those solutions, and they send it off for recycling, get paid back for it. So the amount of impact that giant plant makes is truly minimal and really exemplary for our community and the work that they've put into that. So kudos to Schweitzer on that. The pickleball court was dedicated and rapidly illustrated the need for more pickleball courts in town. So have to
Oh my
find
gosh.
another place to put up some more of
Everywhere.
those. Tyler and I had a little batting about, and I was accused of cheating. So,
Pickleball joke.
Typical.
but it was fun. Let's see, coming up tomorrow morning, 8:30, right here in this room, is the council workshop on the budget. All 293 pages of lines of the thing. So we'll have the workshop here. If anybody wants to attend, come on down. And on August 11th is the mayor's golf tournament. We have the Honest Politicians golf team ready and waiting with Sandra, Gina, Drew, and myself.
We're ready to be bad.
So we are. We are going to hold down that last place again this year, I'm sure.
I
But-
might be the ringer this year.
But you can also, I'm hoping. But anyway, there's still time to sign up if you're interested. Put together a 4-person team, $300. Jump on it and come join us for a good time on August 11th. That's all I have. What do we have over there, Bill?
Sorry, nothing from staff this evening.
Okay. It almost
I move
sounded
we
like
adjourn.
whatever
I'm
you
seconding
said. So
that.
now, shall we adjourn?
Yes.
Okay, that sounded pretty unanimous. We're adjourned. Thank you.
So I